Hey everyone, Casey here. Welcome to In Session with Casey Arbenz, a new podcast where we dive deep into the heart of the legal system. Along with my co-host, Reese Ellis, and an incredible lineup of guests, we'll tackle everything from personal injury to criminal defense. Together, we'll explore culturally relevant issues, revisit landmark cases, and share the real stories behind the verdicts, the people impacted by the law, and those fighting to bring them to justice.
So welcome back to In Session with Casey Arbenz. My name is Reese.
I'm Casey.
We have our first guest here today. I'm going to go ahead and let her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Edwina.
So for listeners who might not be familiar with you and how we all fit together in this puzzle, do you want to go ahead and introduce your experience as a lawyer?
Sure. So, like I said, my name is Edwina Elcox. I own Elcox Law, which is based out of Boise, Idaho. I am a criminal defense attorney. Prior to that, well, how I know Casey is that we went to law school together. He's actually my landlord.
In law school?
I forgot about that, yeah.
He was 709 West Jackson.
That's right.
I don't know how I remember that. Anyway, and like I said, I'm a criminal defense attorney.
Perfect. So how did you find criminal defense work as opposed to all the other specialties you could have gone into in law?
Well, I think that was a trick of the universe because when I was in law school, what I wanted to do was real estate law.
Okay.
And so
very different.
Yes, and when I summered at a firm for 2 years that focused on real estate law, and then when I graduated, it was 2010. So probably the absolute worst time to go into anything real estate related. And I had an internship coordinator in law school who had said, hey, the Spokane County Prosecuting Attorney's Office needs interns, or externs. You'll get in-court experience, and I think this would be an awesome opportunity. I was like, well, yeah, in-court experience would be great, but I will never do criminal law.
Yeah.
And I know the exact moment when I said I will never do criminal law, and here we are. So
You went in wanting to do criminal law.
Well, kind of. So sort of similar, not necessarily real estate for me, but I did want to be a prosecutor when I was in law school, and so I did.
But you wanted to be a trial lawyer, I should say.
Yeah, I think that was it. I wanted to be in court, and I didn't think at that time that criminal defense was what I wanted to do, but I wanted to be a trial lawyer of some variety, and it seemed like prosecution was like the place that would fit who I was at that time, and so yeah, kind of like Edwina, because Edwina went on to be in Boise at the DA's office there, right?
yes.
So, and you've been a prosecutor.
Yes.
And so you have both worked on, I guess you could say, both sides of the aisle. What would you say? Both sides of the courtroom?
Both
sides,
sides,
right?
Perfect.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So you've both worked on that, and I know how that's affected Casey's practice. How has that affected your practice?
So, and Casey and I have talked about this before, and I think we're of the same ilk and sentiment that to be a effective defense attorney, and I'm not saying that this is across the board true because there's plenty of public defenders that go into private practice and make excellent attorneys, but I think having that prosecution experience and understanding how a prosecutor evaluates a case, what they're looking for, and for me, certainly the local politics that go into, because they're elected positions, and having that institutional knowledge is an irreplaceable asset.
Can you give me an example of some of that institutional knowledge? Like things that you wouldn't have known about prosecutors unless you were one?
Oh, sure. So for me and the way that the prosecutor's office that I essentially started my career in, I had another job just briefly before, but really that gave me the foundation for the practice is I saw every facet of so where you're reading probable cause to a judge, and then there's the arraignment, and if it's a felony, you have the preliminary hearing or a grand jury, then it gets to the district court level, you have all of that motion practice, and then ultimately the trial. It's experience that I do not think can be replicated in any other way other than you can't teach it, you can't watch, a YouTube tutorial on it or a TikTok video. You are down in the trenches and you are doing it day to day. And so when I transitioned into criminal defense, my first job that I had, I said, sure, there's a learning curve for me to switch sides and to be a defense attorney, but you're not going to have to explain to me what a preliminary hearing is and how we, what that means and how we do that, or, being one of the things is, I think, as a prosecutor, you're forced to be in front of juries, and it's a scary thing.
Okay, wait, I'm so sorry, I have a question.
Sure, absolutely.
As a criminal defense attorney, you're also forced to be in front of juries too, no?
Sure, I think with prosecutors though, and when you're starting out, you're, right, if the defendant is like, I'm going to trial, you're the one that has to put on the case, right? Defense could sit there like a bump on a log, right? That's not advisable, but you don't have to say a single word.
Okay.
And so learning how to present a case to a jury, and that's a humbling experience.
Yeah.
One of the most valuable things that I've taken out of my career is those jury comments on how you present, how you come across, what they liked, what they didn't like, because you're dealing with 12 folks who come from all different backgrounds and all different perspectives. And so I think that's one of the most valuable things. And when it's like you're told, okay, we're going to trial, and whether it's felony or misdemeanor, but it's experience that I don't think can be replicated in any other way other than just doing it.
Yeah.
It's also a good sandbox to learn in because while, Edwina, myself, have pride and want to do a good job as prosecutors, and you have that pressure of putting on the case and having to do kind of everything, check all the boxes to make sure you meet all the elements to prove your case. At the end of the day, if you lose, all right, it's not the end of the world for society, right? Like you're not going to throw a first-year prosecutor into a big murder trial or something. You're doing a misdemeanor in all likelihood in your first year or two. And so it's a good place to gain those skills and get confident in court, right? In front of juries.
Yeah, because remind me, I think we talked about this in the first episode, you said, and I had no idea that this was a thing, was that law students can prosecute cases, you can't defend.
Exactly, and it's for the same reason.
Right.
Because, as defense attorneys now, the pressure to not screw up
is
so much higher, right? Because your client's going, I hired this person, and my life is essentially in their hands. And so that's not the sandbox to learn how to try a case in a perfect world. And so, prosecution's great because you get to do it.
Yeah.
But then when you switch sides, you've got that experience, and you have enough confidence to say to your client, look, you can put your trust in me because I've done this before, on the other side.
Right. So you learned in the sandbox, and then what was your, did you have an aha moment of I want to switch sides now?
So it was a slow burn, I would say. So one of my first assignments as a prosecutor before I went on the regular, we'll call it felony trial track, was specialty courts. So in Ada County, where I primarily practice, that is the drug court, mental health court, and veterans court. And so these specialty courts are designed to, with the more rehabilitative goal versus a punitive aspect of punishment. And what I started to see over and over and over again is that the regular, we'll call it regular criminal system is, from my perspective, really largely ineffective to deal with a lot of what lands people, in the crosshairs, whether it's substance abuse issues, mental health issues, those things that we have, like, okay, let's put people in jail. But if we really want to protect society, which I think is the overarching goal, of the criminal system, criminal justice system, is, well, how do you can warehouse people and incarcerate them, but if it's substance abuse issues or mental health issues, or oftentimes co-occurring, it really is, and like studies have shown over and over again, it's really ineffective at dealing with that. And so I started, because I think I grew up very, police say something, law enforcement says something, and we do these, and I think that exposure to these specialty courts, and where I was going to review hearings with all of the people to check in and see how they're doing their progress, and are they attending, because there's also an amount of agency, like people have to have responsibility for themselves for the most part, and so it's when treatment is offered, it's incumbent upon the person to accept that and work a program or whatever. But I started to see the human component so much more, that this is just, this person got charged with this crime, and so our spreadsheet or our little chart says that we recommend this sentence and we don't deviate from this. And so I started to see a lot more of the human component, and how do we really make this churning system actually effective in what we're trying to do. And so that was kind of my eye-opening moment, or where I got to, where I thought, okay, we need to deal with the individuals, and that's a hard thing to do in a system of any.
Systems are hard.
Systems are hard.
What I learned very quickly, also, and mostly that I'll admit, it was when I switched to defense, which was pretty quick, I was very briefly a prosecutor, was that human side, right? Which is, these are not just numbers, they're not just sheep or pushing through a turnstile. These are human beings, and many of them, in fact, probably the significant majority, have no real desire to be criminals, right? Like, it's not in their DNA that they woke up and were like, I'm gonna go hurt somebody, I'm gonna go commit a robbery, I'm gonna steal somebody's car.
It's nice to hear that it's not a majority.
It's not at all. I mean, the vast majority, Edwina knows better than me, the vast majority of people charged with crimes is because of the two things she mentioned, right? It's drugs, substance abuse, mental health, and then oftentimes there's that self-medication that people go through, and they're figuring out, like, nobody wakes up and says, I've got mental health issues. They go, why do I'm full of anxiety, I'm depressed, I'm socially awkward, whatever, and that's what leads them to smoke marijuana or start drinking more, and sometimes that evolves into harder drugs, and so then they become dependent. Was it mental health, was it drugs, or both? And now they're in this system. And so, I think, we talk a lot, because it tended to be a trial lawyer podcast. We talk about big trials, but, most of our cases, probably the same for Edwina, is 78% of them, 95% of them settle, right?
Yeah.
If we can pinpoint that there's a issue that's behind the scenes that's causing our clients to go down this road, we work hard to get them assessed and into treatment, and then try to prove to the prosecutor that, look, this is a good person having a rough time. Let's rehab them so that they don't get out of whatever punishment is included here and then reoffend.
Right.
That's not helping society. So I think what I would say is, I think we definitely share that same viewpoint. Yeah.
So, okay, I like that. So I had before we did this, I did ask you to think of a specific case from when you were a prosecutor that really helped with your transition into criminal defense or helped you as a criminal defense attorney. Let's talk about that. What was your specific case?
And brag about yourself.
Yeah, please.
Because I don't know if we've said it yet, Edwina is a badass. And
Uh-huh.
the reason she's on the show, and she's been an inspiration to me in terms of the tough cases she's taken. She did it because you're younger than me, and you started taking on big cases in your early 30s that were on the front page of the newspaper and got national news. So, yeah, talk about those.
So, do you want the highly publicized, or you want the case?
Let's start with the one, and we'll get to the highly publicized.
So, the one when I was a prosecutor was a gentleman that was in Veterans Court, and his struggles across the board were profound, in every sense of the word. And this man, like you were talking about, like you were saying, it's like somebody's struggling, but this isn't who they are, and we rehab, hopefully get them rehabilitated so they're not back in the criminal system. And I probably shouldn't have done this as a prosecutor, but I don't care. I said, if he can graduate the Veterans Court program, and I had moved on and was on the regular trial court track at that point, if he comes back, and the judge that presided over the Veterans Court was absolutely wonderful, truly cared about each of those individuals, and I said, if he can graduate, I will come back for his graduation. And he did, and I did. And
As the prosecutor.
as a prosecutor.
Okay.
And he
Not
was a
normal.
defendant.
Probably not the normal thing to
No.
do. Yeah.
And probably frowned upon, but
Yeah.
I don't care. And because I saw, and you get to know these individuals so much more because there's a treatment team and they're reporting back and giving you all sorts of information, and day to day how this person's doing, whether it's treatment, their drug testing, their substance abuse treatment, mental health treatment, whatever. These are coordinated teams, and I wanted him to succeed so badly because I saw how much he struggled, and really where he had landed in the system was because of all of these things. Like you said, he's not trying to victimize anybody, and I wanted him to succeed, and he did, and it was awesome.
Did you ever tell your client that you had worked as their prosecutor, that you went back to the gentleman's graduation?
I don't think I've ever told any client that, no.
Okay. It was not relevant? Like you didn't break any rules technically?
No, the graduations, they are, the prosecution attends regularly, but I specifically went back for it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's
I
really
was
cool.
no longer assigned to it.
Yeah, I see. That's so cool.
And it was just, it's one of those heartwarming things to see somebody that I knew had struggled so much.
Yeah.
Really overcome a lot of hurdles and do well. And I think it was probably one of the proudest moments of his life. I saw his family and the difference that it made to them, and it was a bright spot in a system that has a lot of trials and tribulations. Whoa, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't get a lot of hugs when you're a prosecutor, because you don't represent anybody really. I mean, in theory, you represent citizenry or people, but you might have a victim here and there that might really appreciate your tact in prosecuting somebody, but it's nothing compared to the hugs you get
As a
on the
defense
defense side. I mean, this was a situation where you were the prosecutor, but you have obviously that kind of connection with just another person that you might have been hard on him while he was in Veterans Court at times, right? Because you wanted him to stay on track. really beat people down, especially people who have, time management issues, like they show up late for court, the judge is tipped off, the judge takes them into custody, and then they get fired from their job, and then they miss rent, their spouse is pissed off with the kids, now it's used in spouse support, custody hearing, like, it can very quickly derail a person's entire life just getting caught up in that system from maybe one bad decision that then yields more, and then a lot of times people, of course, my life's in the dumps, so what do? I go to the bar, and then do another DUI, and then it just compounds. And it's really tough to witness it on both sides.
Sure.
When you see it, but when you can actually be proud of somebody for making substantive changes for months and even years, it's pretty special.
Yeah.
I see it and I see it more because I'm in court and hear a lot of the public defender cases, but where it's like, oh, well, somebody is on pretrial release conditions, and so they're required to submit to UAs, but they're in a job.
Wait, they're required to submit what?
Like urinalysis.
Oh,
right?
okay.
So like they get a drug possession
Yeah,
charge.
you have to get drug tested.
DUIs, and they're testing, but they are in a job that it does not afford them a luxury to be able to leave and get across town. And if they don't have a license, then they have to pay for an Uber or whatever, then they have to pay for their drug test. And it becomes overwhelming to people, especially when you're working at a job that maybe the pay isn't that great, to try and surmount these obligations, which we understand why they have them, but it really does just pile on. And I would say the system is not set up generally for people to be successful. It moves people through, and I don't know, how would you?
Well,
it's.
I'm sure you've had this conversation before, or like had an opportunity for a client to go into a rehabilitative court, and you think we're just setting this person up for failure, right? Like because of those limitations, monetary,
they're not going to do
family
well there.
support, they're gonna flunk out, right? And then they're gonna be worse off. And you go, you of course tell your client his or her options, but at the end of the day, you might be saying something like, look, I can get you this diversion, I can get you into this program, but you could go to jail for 30 days and come out with a cleaner slate. And at some level, I think that's the better option for you, because you're not going to be just stuck in this cycle where you're just going to fail. And it's really gut-wrenching because, like Edwina says, these programs, although certainly well-intentioned and intended to give people an opportunity to better themselves and kind of get in line with the law, you don't have a license, you don't have a car, you don't have money for gas, you don't have a boss who didn't work with you. It's just like,
it's not realistic.
How do you do this stuff?
Yeah.
Like, you can take the bus and all that, it all sounds great, right? And the three of us could probably do it, right?
Yeah.
Because even if we had those limited resources, we probably have the gumption or the self-esteem or
the family support.
yeah,
or the,
right, yeah. But it may just be who we are, right? Like the three of us may have a depth of being and strength that we can do extremely tough things and accomplish huge obstacles. But not everybody has that either, right?
Yeah.
Like some people were abused as kids and have, they don't have the self-confidence. They give up easier than we might.
And
it's
time
really
management is not a crime. Like,
Sure.
so it's like, it can be annoying,
right.
but it doesn't mean you should be in jail.
Right.
So that's interesting. I wouldn't have really thought about it like that.
And that's an important lesson I've had to learn. And like you said, okay, I've had to time and time again put myself in and learn to put myself in another person's shoes, because I'm like, well, how did you? This was the requirement, and this was very simple. And now we have to go back in front of a judge who gave you this very simple mandate, and now we have to go explain why that hasn't been done and how has that not been done. And then it is a very important I think part of this job is to be able to be like, okay, my way that I function is largely not how other people do, and a task may be overwhelming because there's not a babysitter, or there's not money to do this, or there's not money to pay for the class. And so that is, I think, that human component is a critical part of this job, because you know, if you're constantly like, how did you not do this? Which those conversations have to be had.
We all get frustrated.
Yeah.
Like Edwina says, we tee it up for them. We make it sound very simple, and we try to make it very simple, and then it doesn't happen. It certainly can be a frustrating aspect of our job. But I think where prosecutors who are like lifelong prosecutors, not all of them, of course, but I think a lot of them, until you represent somebody like that who has a lot of really wonderful qualities, you can just go through life just wanting to hammer everybody and not ever saying, gosh, you know, that poor person, like, despite some poor choices, you know, criminal behavior, like, if you just think about it societally, like, okay, if someone commits a crime and they're to be punished, the main goal should be for them not to commit a crime after that, right? Because we don't want to be subsequent victims. So let's do what we got to do to try to rehabilitate. And if your only thing is punishment, then we're just gonna, it's just going to be an endless cycle. We've seen that. You know?
So, I guess this is a question I have for both of you. And we've talked about this a little bit, but I want to talk about it more because I found a better way to word the question.
Yeah, sure.
It's really nice to hear that most of the people you run it with as clients didn't set out to like go murder 10 people, and you know that's a rare percentage of people probably. But whether they set out to commit a crime or they didn't, and they had a bad life circumstance and whatever happened, and the crime occurred, how do you defend a person without, like a client, how do you defend a client without defending the crime that they're being accused of?
So I think by and large, sure, there are some people that just need to be removed from society because they're evil or whatever you want to say. Sure, very minuscule percentage of people. So I think what we deal with largely is people that are better than their worst moment, and so that they, you know, and sometimes I have a specific case in mind right now where when you use the domestic violence example, where I think that sometimes the system gets it wrong and the actual victim becomes the defendant because they've been pushed too far or whatever the case may be. Or, you know, that there is somebody that, and a lot of times, I would say a majority of the time, that this is the case, that somebody has done something bad, right? That they've done something that they shouldn't have done. They were out of control of their emotions. They were drunk, under the influence, and did something that is conduct that they are being held accountable for.
Yeah.
But mostly, and I truly do believe this about people in general, that most people are not trying to do or be bad. They're not trying to victimize other people. That, you know, people have their moments, certainly, and then there's, you know, exceptions to that. But so it's defending the person in the context of their action, but most people, I think, are better than their really low moment.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think, you know, you like to believe that there's redemption in everybody. And I mean, I certainly have had cases like we were just talking about, right, where the person who actually gets accused of the crime, especially in domestic violence situations, it's like, yeah, you know, she punched him in the nose, broke his nose, but how many times has this guy been a total freaking asshole?
Absolutely.
You know, so we've all seen those cases. But, you know, for me, and I think we talked about this previously, is at the end of the day, it's very, very simple. I believe that we have laws. I believe they should be enforced. I believe people should be held accountable. personal life. I've got kids. I want safe streets and safe communities. I want police to do their jobs. But, you know, society has police. Society has prosecutors. They have a lot of resources. If somebody gets charged with a crime, they usually only get one person in their corner. They're lucky they have 2 or 3 lawyers in their corner, but really it's 99 times out of 100. They get one person to vouch for them. And whether they're innocent or guilty or whatever, that person's job is to make sure that they don't get railroaded by the system. And in the instance where they actually are innocent, that they don't get wrongfully convicted. And the only way that you can make sure that people don't get wrongfully convicted is for the defense attorney to fight their ass off in protection of their client. Recognizing, of course, again, there's police, there's prosecutors, even most judges are pretty law and order minded as well. Most of them are former prosecutors. And so there's a whole system to protect the public and to try to convict people of crimes. Like, that exists. There's no shortage of money to do all that. At the point where we believe falsely that these defendants are getting away with it due to loopholes and all that, and the stuff you see or hear on TV and rhetoric and, you know, TV shows, like, that's not the reality.
Right.
And the reality is most of our cases end up in some sort of plea bargain of some variety where our clients are held accountable at some level, but everybody wants to talk about OJ, right? Like, did he do it? Did he get away with murder? And oh my God, what a huge injustice. Well, sure, if that's true, that is an injustice in that moment, and it's horrific for the victims. But there's been infinity X the number of people who've been wrongfully accused and convicted because, especially throughout the world, right, where we don't have a system that gives them a person in their corner to make sure that all the proper procedures are followed and that we don't have these wrongful convictions. Because to me, as we talked about, Shapiro's favorite quote, or most notable quote, was, our system is not perfect, but in our system, one guilty person might walk so that 100 innocent people aren't wrongfully convicted, and that's the best system we have in the world. And I agree with that. I think that's totally accurate.
Okay, shifting gears a little bit. When you're in the courtroom, we've talked about how, at least when you're in the courtroom, it's a lot like being an actor, and how you have to rehearse behind the scenes, and then you're on show, or you're performing, you're on stage when you are in trial in the courtroom. Do you feel, well, first off, do you feel like that's true for you too?
Absolutely. When I'm preparing, it's 100%. When I'm preparing for a jury trial, like, you would think I was like a lunatic. Like, I will be like, and I don't even realize that I'm doing it. I'm just so up in my head about things that I'm, like doing my opening statement out loud. I'll be making dinner and I'll be like, oh, my cross-exam question, and I'm, like taking notes and things, and it's just, yeah. I mean, the trial preparation and all of that, it is. I think you have to have a personality for it, but the intersection between having the ability to present a case before a jury in a coherent manner that tells a story, because that's what it is. It's not just like, and you did this, and then you did this, and then you collected this evidence. When you're representing a person that is sitting there accused, you are telling their story. And there's all of these other things that come into that. You better know the prosecution's case better than they know it. And when you're in front of a jury, if you're cross-examining a police officer, and you're prepared, you know where you're going, and they don't recall, you better not be fumbling through your papers in front of a jury. You better be like, we're going to Bates stamp page 84.
Yeah.
You need to refresh your recollection, officer. Let me do that for you, because you were there. I wasn't, but I'm prepared.
Yeah.
Because this is my client's life on the line here. And so let's go back and take a look at that.
Yeah.
You gotta, it's not just it's the case and the story that you're delivering, and then every aspect, like your binders better be lined up properly. You don't want, sloppy. I think it's for me, and I know I'm maybe nuts for thinking all of these things, but I'm like, it's everything. It's when you stand up in court, you are courteous to all of the court staff. It's just, you don't know when you're wandering out in the hallway if the jurors may be out there. I mean, you're on in every facet.
Yeah. So my next question was going to be, do you rely more on strategy or instinct? But I feel like I know the answer, but go ahead. Do you rely more on strategy or instinct? Thanks for listening to part 1 of our conversation with Edwina Elcox. Join us next week as Edwina and Casey go head-to-head on strategy versus instinct, break down a landmark case, and open up about how they each navigate the personal side of life as a trial lawyer. I can't wait for you to hear how these former law school classmates, now stellar criminal defense attorneys, each bring their own approach into the courtroom. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a review. We'll see you next time.